Good morning. And now we start the week after the NFL draft. But that doesn't mean we're necessarily going to be talking about the NFL draft because some major college football news interrupted the NFL draft, and that is reports of Pitt's Jordan Addison leaving Pitt for USC and maybe a sweet NIL deal. This is mic'd up here on Pittsburgh Sports Live, of course, Pittsburgh Sports Now. And you can find all our draft coverage and my draft shows and draft talk and all of that here on Pittsburgh Sports Live, Steelers Now, and all of those college networks to correspond. But we got to talk Jordan Addison here, what this could mean for Pitt, what this means for college football, and everything that goes along with it as he kind of interrupted the weekend of coverage and kind of shocked the college football world. Not necessarily that something like this could be a surprise that could happen because we were headed down this road, but just the timing, the fact that it is a Pitt player with the current state of the Pitt program the way it is, and the whole deal that is being reported of him at USC. It might actually be better him being there than actually being an NFL draft pick right now, as amazing as that sounds. I'm Mike Asti, that's Mike Vukovcan. And Mike, this interrupted the coverage. I mean, literally, there was in the middle of the NFL draft coverage. We're all having to scramble and try to figure out what's going on here. And reports then lingered throughout the weekend. And of course, this has to be official that he goes in the transfer portal and Pitt processes it. And so we're talking a little bit before it's fully official here, but it really feels like this is happening. Just initial reaction to this before we unpack this full thing, because obviously this is a top receiver, a top player for Pitt, the Biletnikoff winner. Yes, Kenny Pickett's gone, but you bring in Slovis, you bring in a grad transfer from USC that was going to be a big part of the program this year. Pitt was trying not to miss a beat despite losing Pickett. This certainly causes them to miss some beats. And this is really about money. This is about a deal, an NIL deal that's rumored to be about $3 million, potentially a condo, could be more than if he was Kenny Pickett and some draft picks this year. And, you know, certain programs are losing players to big markets, regardless of the team situation. That's kind of been the theme of the past few months or so as well.
Well, a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago, when we were talking about the transfer portal with mostly basketball, I just said how the transfer portal is ruining college athletics, and it's ruined college athletics because when something like this happens, it's not turning back. I understand everyone's argument, and just save me the BS about the kids deserve their money and all that stuff. Well, they're getting money to go to college. Tell them to pay for college then, and their tuition. So I don't really want to hear about that line. But he does have the right to earn money. Right. But what I'll say this before I get into Jordan, what this is gonna end up happening here, Mike, is within, save this show because this will happen. I don't know the timeline. I would say within 5 years, less than 5 years, what this is all pointing toward, and with the NIL, what's going to happen here now in college athletics is, especially with football, in particular football, what's going to happen is there is going to be a major split. Football as we know it isn't going to be here anymore as far as the way it's going.
Yeah.
There's going to be the SEC, probably a 25-team league, and they're going to handpick some other teams. And there's going to be two divisions of football. There's going to be the SEC, probably Ohio State, Michigan. You're going to pick your handful of teams, USC maybe, and then there's going to be other college football. This is where this is all headed, the haves and the have-nots. And this was just the first sign of it, or the first thing to happen. This will happen within, I would guess, 5 years. So this is the road we're going on with that. As far as this goes, it stinks for Pitt. I have mixed feelings about Jordan Addison, in that I know that he has the right to do what he wants. I know he has the right to earn the money. However, if reports are true, and I'm fairly certain they are, that the Pitt NIL team stepped up and basically matched or came up with a lot more money than Jordan Addison was getting, was set to earn at Pitt to begin with, and he turned his back on that and went out to USC. I think that's a bad look for him, regardless of what right he has. And I know there's a lot of pissed off people over at Pitt right now at what's going on, not only at Lincoln Riley, but this whole situation. But it's not over yet. But it sure as hell looks like Jordan Addison is gone. But I don't think this will bury the Pitt team.
Yeah, and we'll get more into that here in a moment here. Asti, Mike Vukovcan mic'd up, and we're getting mic'd up because Jordan Addison, it appears, is leaving Pitt for USC, and that involves money as the main crux of the reason there. Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. Obviously, players, and that is where I'm kind of torn as well. Players or anybody in the world, I always have had the opinion, has the right to make money. And if you can make money, look at influencers out there. If you can make money off of you being yourself and whatever skill set you either worked up to or God graced you with, who am I to say not go get, don't get go get that cash? Go ahead. It's name, image, and likeness. So this isn't necessarily he's getting paid some salary. He's getting this because of his name, image, and likeness can command it and then garners that money. So it's hard to have a problem with that. And also the other end, of course, that we talked about before, that college coaches, and maybe this is how we got here, they were screwing over players. I mean, Bobby Petrino did it. You're at a school, you recruit the players to being there, and yeah, there's a buyout involved, but you leave. There's been coaches that left middle of a season, left before bowl game. Look at Brian Kelly this year. And those players prior to now, they had to sit out a year or so if they said, I don't want to be at that school anymore because I was there for that coach. He didn't get fired. He left me. I'm screwed. So it was unfair before, but to fair it up has created an incredible unbalance the other way. A lot of time in our world, when you try for equality, you end up switching it the whole other way. And that's kind of what's happened. But yeah, I think we're headed down a path of two super conferences, regardless of whatever they're called. Obviously, the SEC clearly is going to be one of them. And USC is going to definitely be involved. And a program like Pitt, despite riding high and being the highest point it's been since the 76 national title, arguably, with a Heisman candidate, getting drafted in the first round, the only QB there goes to the Steelers, ACC crown, etc. They're not to the level of USC. This also goes to show that even though Pitt as a program on the field is better off than USC and has been better than USC for at least one, if not a few years, because USC hasn't been nearly what they were, if they're not in the media market, if they're not one of the historic programs, if they're not a darling, we talked about this, Mike. People who were surprised by Lincoln Riley leaving Oklahoma, where he has been a consistent contender for the playoff, and yeah, they're leaving the Big 12 for the SEC, who were surprised. I never was. Even though USC hasn't been a better team on the field, it's absolutely a better job because you're in LA. And I think part of that, I guess the only pushback of, yeah, it sucks if he's leaving for that NIL deal, if Pitt had a situation where they could try to match it or get close. But I'm sure he also figures Los Angeles, there's even money that could be there on the side to that. Is this now? You obviously are tapped into the Pitt program. How surprising is this from people you know at Pitt, or just your knowledge of the Pitt program? Because this is a Biletnikoff winner. USC actually lost a quarterback this past season that Pitt gained. Yeah, Lincoln Riley's there, but many thought Lincoln Riley would need a year or two to get them going and then could contend for a national title. Certainly at least 1 year, just because of getting the roster together. It doesn't appear he's willing to wait, but the roster right now doesn't say Pac-12 champion. So
I'll say this: Jordan Addison, if he thinks he's going, like my head's exploding because there's so many things that I want to say.
Yeah.
One of the things, get to what you just said. He's not going to a better situation. He is not going to put up better stats.
Yeah, it's just money, I guess.
He's not, he's not putting up better stats in USC than he's only going to be there 1 year.
Yeah.
And right. The Pitt situation is, and the thing, here's the thing that I tweeted about this weekend, because this is a thing that, as you can tell, I'm probably fired up about this. Not because because it's just, it's just disgusting with college sports is how the national media is going to treat this. You're not going to have one because these national media guys want to be buddies with these coaches, and they don't want to rub them the wrong way. They won't call
especially a
this out.
USC and Lincoln
Yes,
Riley.
exactly.
Yeah.
Vic Vitale is one of the few ones, because obviously he's not in college football. So what the hell does he care?
He does,
yeah. They're not going to call this out for what it is. And, you have Pete Thamel, or whatever the hell his name is, talking about, he's going to go, he wants to go out to California to join his Maryland buddy. Has nothing to do with Caleb Williams being from Maryland. Quit being so naive, Pete, and saying something so stupid and insulting our intelligence with this. Just say what it is. Call out Lincoln Riley and USC for tampering. Say what's going on. But they won't do this, and I equate this to Will Wade at LSU. Everyone knew the guy was cheating beyond everything, but there's not one national media reporter that will say or rip Will Wade until he gets fired. And then you have the guts to come out and say, "Oh, what a cheater," and everything like that. Why don't you say that when he had the job? And this is the same thing what's going on with Lincoln Riley here. Everyone knows Jordan Addison isn't officially in the transfer portal yet. He's in Los Angeles, right, and he has a $2 to $3 million deal. That's not legal. So just say it. Lincoln will give you another interview. It's just so. And I don't know how, Mike, the NCAA is going to fix this. Once this has happened,
I was going to get there. Yeah.
When the next president comes in, how do you address this? It's going to be an impossible situation to address.
Yeah.
And the programs that should be winners and can compete, like you mentioned, USC. It's pathetic that Texas isn't a national power every year, considering where they are.
Not one player drafted.
Right.
Not one Texas player drafted.
Right.
There have been bad teams that aren't Texas in terms of elite programs that got players drafted.
You don't think those people out in Texas, how dirty they're going to get once they see what's happening here?
Yeah.
This is going to be the precedent-setting case that's going to just open up college sports, because this is going to trickle over to basketball now too.
Oh yeah, and it basically is. And I actually will say, I'll throw out Danny Cannell is somebody who has been out there basically trying to call it what it is, because he even actually quote tweeted and replied to many people who were saying basically, just let this be. College football is better when USC is good. And I can't dispute that. I think college football is probably better when USC is good. It is better to have USC, the ratings they will bring, than, say, Oregon. It's a premier program. It is better when USC is good. However, it's not better when USC is good the way they're trying to get good, the point that he's trying to make. Because, this is – I guess it's not illegal, though. You're bringing up the LSU example. Based on the NIL, it's almost legal cheating now in a way. And, it's opened up Pandora's box. But
no, it's not. It's not legal when the guy isn't in the –
he's not in the portal yet.
He's not in the portal. And they've contacted him weeks before. So that's where the rub is. If Jordan Addison decides after the season, a week after the season, you know what, I'm out. And that's the other thing that
for whatever, even if it's a deal, right? Yeah. For whatever reason.
If he decides after the season, you know what, I'm not like a lot of people do.
Yeah.
Enter the season, and then it's open season, then it's free agency, and then nobody can have a problem with it, and I don't have a problem with it. It's free agency, and whoever offers you the best deal, go get it.
Yeah, when it really is free agency.
Spring practice with the team, and you finish spring practice, and it's 2 days before the transfer portal for football closes, and then all of a sudden shenanigans go on. Come on.
Yeah. Mic'd up here. Mike Vukovcan getting mic'd up. I'm Mike Asti. We're obviously talking Jordan Addison and that situation that interrupted the NFL draft. That's actually where I wanted to go, because I think the timing of this is obviously the biggest part of the issue here. And the other end of it is, could maybe a timing situation be how to calm this down a little bit? You're never going to be able to put Genie back in the bottle. And obviously the haves in terms of programs that are in bigger markets that have more money, even look at Messidor in West Virginia, going to Miami, basically for a bigger media market and those type of things. That's going to happen. But Is there a way that maybe to calm this down by tightening a window? You mentioned the start of spring practice. For me, once spring practice starts is when the portal should be over. It shouldn't even be open this long. Could they maybe try to tighten the window and have it be February and March, or the end of February and March, like make it like a month-long thing where that's free agency and that's a bonanza, but it can't linger this long. Once spring practice starts, you got to lock into where you are. And if you want to do this, you have to do it weeks ago. Because as you brought up before, this does make it incredibly hard for a head coach. Nobody cares about that. It was unfair before. But if you sneeze the wrong way at a player, they can choose to transfer and screw you over. That's happened in basketball, maybe more than football, but could happen the other way. Could you tighten the window? And could that calm it down?
Yeah, I haven't got into that. I haven't got far in my thinking process with that, but I think that's a good idea. I'm sure there's somebody out there that's going to find a fault in that.
Right, I'm sure.
They have to do something, and if people wonder why, I don't feel bad. But, there's no coincidence that Mark Emmert, the president of NCAA, quit. Jay Wright gets out of college basketball. Roy Williams probably left a little early. This is going to drive coaches out that don't want to get involved. And it's just, recruiting is difficult to begin with. And to now have to deal with this, and it's not recruiting anymore. And for Pitt fans, I know Jeff Capel is a lightning rod for criticism, and he's public enemy number one with Pitt fans because of how he's underperformed at Pitt so far. If people think that Jeff Capel can't recruit, you're crazy. You're crazy. This is why Jeff Capel can't recruit. Recruiting isn't the same as it was 10 years ago, 6-7 years ago.
Yeah.
It completely changed. Reason Jeff Capel can't recruit is because Pitt isn't on equal footing with the NIL money, and Pitt doesn't cheat to the levels of other teams. That's why Pitt can't compete recruiting in basketball. It has nothing to do with Jeff Capel's recruiting ability. So this is just an example of that. And it's amazing to this, and it's going to wonder how this is going to impact Pitt football's recruiting, because there's no doubt this NIL is going to impact every team in the country's ability.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you recruit, you don't know how long you have a player. You could recruit, and he could agree to come, and everything could be fine. And all of a sudden, you wake up in the morning, and he's gone.
Yeah, it's just going to change everything, and I just don't know what the next president. We started your question here. My mind's kind of, as I said, I'm just I don't know what this next guy. I don't know what rules he's going to set in, because once this stuff already starts happening, you're not going to be able to take this away from the kids. Some people talked about having a sort of a salary cap or a limit on which. How are you going to monitor that?
And then you would need contracts, and then it goes into the conversation of, and this was kind of the compromise before, because this all started off of a movement of pay college athletes, and of course, as we've continued as a social being, it was unfair before. So you get into, this is exactly what the Fab Five wanted in the early '90s. This is exactly what Johnny Manziel and others have wanted, where or Terrell Pryor, for example, don't have to pay us $300 every 2 weeks for whatever we would get or wherever we would command. If I can make money off my name, image, and likeness individually, like you're selling Michigan jerseys with a number 4, just put Weber on the back and give me some of the money, because before everybody else was getting paid for my image if I'm Chris Weber in the Fab Five, except for me. That's why they wore the plain blue shirts, because they were all upset about that. So if this existed then, I don't think they would have been mad. However, there are then some that say that if you're going to be in this neighborhood where you're doing a cap and you're giving contracts, and yes, it's name, image, and likeness, so sometimes it's other companies and businesses or people offering the money, do you have to open up where you are giving even the worst guy on the roster $300 every 2 weeks or whatever the case may be, open up to just pay everybody? And then if you can make name and likeness on top of that, you're going to get even more. But as we were talking off the air, if you go down that road, and really we're there anyway, there are certain star athletes that are literally going to make more money to, maybe this will help guys stay in college football, because Addison's going to make more money than some NFL draft picks. So I don't know if that ends up where we go here, but that's kind of a conversation now. And the one thing I do want to bring up that was brought up that is kind of part of this too, that also is like a taboo subject to bring up nationally. If, and maybe not, because I guess NFL draft picks aren't making as much as some of these deals, but if players could leave to the NFL at any time and they didn't have to stay for a few years, even in the NBA now, you have to stay for a couple of years. You can't go right out of high school like you could with LeBron James and company. If you could just go to the pros whenever, even out of high school, do what Maurice Clarett tried to do after that year at Ohio State, would that actually fix this a little bit? Because it does go back to the argument of if a company wants to employ somebody, even if you don't think they're ready, then you should be able to. The entire argument of Maurice Clarett in the early 2000s, after that Ohio State national title year, he was a freshman, even in court, they were arguing, well, you're not ready. It won't be a successful career. Your body needs to grow a little bit. And his argument is, first of all, his lawyer said he's a rock, but it doesn't matter if the company wants to pay him. It's up to them to make that decision. Does that open that up?
It should have been that way forever. Nobody has the right or should have the right to stop your employment.
Yeah,
your ability to make money. If a kid does that and he fails and doesn't make it, then and that was his mistake. And maybe it'll be an example for the next person. And then he's going to have to figure out what to do. But it's a risk. But if that's a risk that he and his family want him to take, nobody should be able to stop that. And yes, I think that would stop. Jordan Addison.
He'd be in the NFL right now.
Yeah, he'd be in the draft right now. The quarterback at USC or Ohio State, CJ Stroud. He'd be in the NFL right now. He'd have left. He wouldn't be playing. He wouldn't be playing this year for Ohio State. Probably the Heisman Trophy winner, Bryce Young. Mm-hmm. He would have entered the NFL draft this year instead of going back to Alabama. Kids should be allowed to do what they want. But at the same time, once you make that decision to go, you can't all of a sudden come back to college.
Yeah. It'd be a risky decision, but it's hard to restrict
it, or you don't get in the round that you think you're gonna get. Then that's on you, and you live with it. But I do think that's and I wouldn't be surprised if that's an area that both sides.
Do you think though? Because it seems like a taboo subject. Because I guess the issue there is, even though the NFL is going to be fine,
it can't be any more taboo than what's going on with college athletics right now and what's going to be happening.
I hear that. I guess the
Jordan Addison thing is just gonna. This program, big money programs, around the country. Boosters and those guys are licking their lips right now at what happened with this Jordan. They're eyeing people because the window's closed now. They're eyeing people right now on rosters that they want to try to go after next year. Mm-hmm. Their people have probably already reached out to whoever to their free agency list. Once the season ends, we're going after him. Let's get some companies lined. I'm telling you, it's
I'm 100%. I'm sure.
The Texases of the world, the programs, the underperformers that haven't been able to compete the right way and perform the right way because you're not able to, because your football staff and your hasn't been able to get it done on the field fairly. So now you got to go down a different road to do that. The Ohio States of the world, they're going to probably dabble into it, but they're good enough to compete on their own. They can recruit, they can coach players up. Pathetic programs like USC, Texas. I could probably, think of a few more other Florida State. They're a team that
I would think Florida State's going to do this. Yeah,
Miami,
it's an historic program. Miami.
Yeah, Miami. Programs like that should be winners, but have been losers for the past 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to get dirty. Miami will be a program that will get they'll get their share of players now, one way or the other.
Yeah, Mike Vukovcan mic'd up here. I'm Mike Asti, obviously. Jordan Addison reportedly leaving Pitt for USC, and NIL deal definitely involved is a big reason why. Before we get to just the state of the Pitt program here and then close up shop, but just there are some that I guess are that I've also seen some pushback, and this is a little bit unreasonable now, but the only way to compete as a Pitt, even though you're successful on the field right now, you're still not in the media market that LA is in. You're still not the historic program that USC is in. So is the onus on some Pittsburgh or maybe Pitt connected celebrity? And I know there are companies that have started this, or even some companies and businesses out there to step up even further. You did mention that Pitt did try to get something going here, and there are some companies and involved. I know Aaron Donald, Larry Fitz got involved, and there were some rumblings of trying to equate this money and pull things together to try to match Addison, but it doesn't appear to make a difference. But just in the long run, do certain programs have the onus, and now those boosters and celebrities, et cetera, to pick it up? And like, I know Mark Cuban didn't go to Pitt, but does Mark Cuban need to start an NIL company and funnel players to Pitt or something like that? I mean, do those things need to happen to try to compete with the shady environment?
That's a great topic, Mike, because I was talking with this on the phone with somebody yesterday about this very topic. And this sucks for Pitt. But in the long run, let's be honest, Jordan Addison was only going to be here one more year.
Right.
Okay. This wasn't a thing where, you ruined a long-term relationship. Well, he ruined a long-term relationship.
He might have. Yeah.
Yeah. With Pitt. Yeah. With
I don't know about Jersey being retired despite being a
yeah, that ain't happening. But if you want to try to draw a positive from this, I think this is a wake-up call to Pitt and other teams across the country, and to their boosters, to people within the university, that they need to step up their game. That college football has changed, college athletics has changed, and if it is a priority for you, and some say they're in the game but they're not, if you're in the game to try to compete to win, this is a sign, this is a wake-up call for them that we need to step things up here. We need to find people. Our NIL team has to get better. And I think the people leading their department are well on their way to getting better. I think this is going to strengthen them. I think they need to find people, connections to the university. I think they need to find business leaders in the city. Everything. I think this could help Pitt in the long run, because it realizes it's going to tell them what they're going to need to do in order to compete. They can't just say we want to compete. You got to prove it. And unfortunately, part of proving it is going to be finding ways, creative ways to compensate athletes. And I think this could be the thing that spearheads that and puts that into fast motion.
Yeah, and it's not even enough, because Pitt maybe thought this, and these were comments after Pitt won the ACC crown, to be good and have a special season on the field, which is the best season Pitt's had since '76, really, that could linger and that could unravel and make you great for the future and bring recruits in, and that's why Slovis is there, etc. That's part of it, but that's not enough. Clearly, that's not enough. It is going to be all be about the money and all about the business. Well, he's only going to be at USC 1 year. He was only going to be at Pitt one more year, but this does go into, say, the backyard brawl, returning with two former USC quarterbacks going head to head, as weird as that's going to be. But now Pitt will be without their top receiver, who honestly, even if I'm Slovis, I'm probably sitting there, and I know he was positive about culture and he wants to stay at Pitt, but I'm a little bit annoyed myself. He kind of did go for football reasons himself. He's leaving a big market and what he had going on. what does this do for Pitt on the field in the short term and the long term? You talked about future recruiting, but this Pitt team this next season, you lose the best player now with Pickett gone. You lose the best receiver. That is a weapon you lose with a new quarterback coming in, a new coaching staff in terms of under Narduzzi offensive-wise being there now. Is Pitt still an ACC favorite? What does this do? How big of a hit is this for next season?
Knowing Pat Narduzzi and his ways in which he motivates, I think this is going to be it was a wake-up call for the people around the university. Coaches always look for motivational tools to get their players going.
Oh, yeah.
Even if they would have had Jordan Addison this season, he would have had to try to find a way, even though, they'd still want to win. There's no question about those players probably would have went in there a little bit with we're the ACC champs. And I'm not going to say they would have relaxed a little bit, but maybe they would have. This will not allow them to relax. Pat Narduzzi will be harping on them. It already started yesterday with players coming out. We, not me. That is going to strengthen them as far as it's us, it's team. This will be brought up a lot. We're not good enough. Player wants to leave. He will find so many ways to use this, and I think this is going to strengthen the players' relationships on the team. I really do. I saw Kate Slovish yesterday tweeting. He tweeted something about culture. He talked about the and I think they'll be okay. And when you look at on the field, their wide receiver group, nobody, even the most diehard Pitt fan, can't dismiss the fact that they're losing the best receiver, one of the two best receivers in college football. Nobody's stupid enough to say they're not going to miss him. However, even if you would have asked this question before he left, what is Pitt's deepest position on their team? They would have told you, 9 out of 10 people would have told you their wide receiver depth. So while they're not going to be able to replace Jordan Addison, they do have guys in that team that are really good. And within Frank Cignetti's offense, I don't think their offense is going to, their offense is still going to be able to put up points, and it'll all be predicated on whether or not Slovis or Patty can get the job done. Guys like Mumfield, Jared Wayne, who's going to be a high NFL draft pick. I love Jalen Barden. He's a guy that hasn't really gotten a shot a little bit because of injury and also because of the depth in front of him. He had a true freshman last year, Jaden Bradley, who's about 6'3", that he's going to get involved. He can run like a deer. And then the big thing, and maybe the NCAA wants to throw Pitt a bone here, is Bob Means. He's a guy that transferred a couple weeks ago. He's petitioning the NCAA right now because this is his second transfer to be eligible this season. If he is eligible, if the NCAA grants him eligibility this season, the guy's 6'2", can fly. He would probably be a starter on Pitt's team. That would really help with the loss of Jordan Addison. You have 5 or 6 quality wide receivers there. So that's something that Pitt fans want to keep an eye on this next month or so, next couple months, is whether the NCAA will grant eligibility to the transfer from Louisiana Tech. If they do that, I honestly don't think the offense, especially with the way Frank Cignetti is going to try to maybe change the offense a little bit to balance it out a little bit, I don't think the offense is going to suffer a ton. It's going to suffer some, but I think there's guys on this current depth chart that can get the job done.
Yeah, Pitt's not going to go all of a sudden and be an awful team, but this certainly is a hit on the field. He's the best player. There's depth there, but this is all about the money, as we've been talking about this whole show. This really had nothing to do about football in terms of the decision. And who knows if they tighten the window? I think that's the easiest thing to do is just immediately tighten the window. Then you don't have to worry about the NFL or anything else there. But yeah, players could go right to the NFL. That might fix things. If you do tighten the window, that would calm things down. But we're likely headed to a more disaster, I guess, for programs like Pitt in this regard. And who knows? Maybe fans of USC are going to love this because it basically would make USC kind of a pro team. Is kind of what they were for a while in LA as the only team in town.
I still think
kind of what it is now.
About this. I would still make Pitt even without Jordan Addison. I don't know that they're a top 15, top 10 team anymore. Like ESPN had them on for their preseason thing.
Yeah,
but I still think they're the best team in the. I would still make them the best team in the Coastal over. I guess a lot of people are, riding Miami right now, because of Mario Cristobal. But I would still take.
They still might be a year away getting more.
Yeah, consider what Pitt's bringing back, both offensively and defensively.
Right.
My money would still go on Pitt to be the winner in the Coastal.
Yeah, and then and once you do that, you're in the title game, and then you certainly have a chance in there. And it might, playoff might be really, really hard. It didn't happen last year with how good.
It's not going to have a disastrous season,
but it's not going to be a disastrous season. They shouldn't take that much of a step back, and it would be hard even if Addison was there. That doesn't mean you're going to be in the ACC again and be a top 10 team again or top 15 or whatever the case would be. So that's hard to repeat again. They did have an upset loss even with him last year early in the season that almost derailed things. So it was a special year for Pitt. That doesn't take away from that, and it could still be a solid year for Pitt. But it's a hit, and I think it's a bigger hit for college football as a whole than it even is for Pitt on the field coming season. So we're going to have more on that. Obviously, you stick with Pittsburgh Sports Now for more on that. We're going to have more shows on this. I'm sure this is going to keep on happening and keep on being news. So, of course, subscribe, head over to Pittsburgh Sports Now for more as the story develops and likely gets uglier. but stay tuned. Asti, Mike Vukovcan.